This is a quick start guide for the Excel Skills annual cash flow projection template. This template enables users to prepare annual cash flow projections for any user-defined 5-year period. Let's start with the template assumptions. So on the assumption sheet, you can enter the business name, which is used as a heading on all the sheets, and you can specify a start date. So your 5-year period will be determined based on the start date that you enter in this cell. The income statement projections, the first is turnover. So your turnover value for the first year is specified on the Inc. States sheet. So specify your turnover values in this section, and your subsequent years are determined based on the turnover growth assumption that you specify on the assumption sheet. Your gross profit percentages are entered on the Inc. State sheet. So you enter a gross profit percentage here, and then your gross profit values and your cost of sales values are determined based on the gross profit percentages. So you'll notice that there's this weird coding in column A. So that relates to your sales tax and your trade receivables or trade payables. So the first two digits, V1 in this case, indicate that the sales tax percentage for the V1 code needs to be used. And the second two digits indicate whether it's cash sales or sales on credit. So C1 would mean that it's sales on credit. If it was C0, it would be cash sales. The same for expenses. So the same code structure is basically used for expenses. What you can also notice is that we've included 100% GP here for service-based businesses or service-based income. So income from services, there's no cost of sales, so 100% GP can be included. If you only have service-based income, you can include your turnover here, include 100% as your GP, and you can basically hide your cost of sales and gross profit sections. You can also insert additional turnover lines by just inserting the entire rows in all of the sections and then copying the formulas for gross profit value and cost of sales. The turnover and gross profit percentage will be entered. Then just in general also, wherever you see the yellow markings in column A, it indicates that that line requires user input. So if you see no yellow highlighting here, then it's calculated lines which contain formulas. So if we go back here, the operating expenses for the first year is set here. Same with other income, by the way. So it's set in column C, and then subsequent years are determined based on your expense inflation percentage. So that is also applied in your staff costs section. For both the operating expenses and staff cost sections, you can edit the lines descriptions to adjust them for your business, and you can also insert additional lines by just inserting a row and copying one of the existing rows to copy the formulas, and then changing your description and entering the appropriate year one expense value. Depreciation and amortization, that can be entered on the assumption sheet for year 2 to 5 and year 1 on the income statement sheet. So the same basis as your other expense items. Then interest and taxation, that's automatically calculated. So interest basically is calculated based on your amortization table. So we've included 4 amortization tables: loan 1, 2, 3, and leases. So the interest charges come from these sheets, and taxation is calculated with a formula. We'll get to that calculation. So dividends also calculated automatically. We'll get to that, and we end with retained earnings, and then there's a few ratios at the bottom of the income statement. Okay, just going back to the assumptions. So the next section on the assumption sheet includes some financial assumptions, which are basically input that's used on the cash flow statement. So you have some items here, which these values that you specify here are used as balance sheet movements on the cash flow statement. Then you also have purchases of property, plant and equipment, intangibles and investments, which generally fall under cash flow from investment activities. So let's just have a look here. So here are your working capital movements, and then here are your investment activities. So you enter the values on the assumption sheet, and it's automatically updated on the cash flow statement sheet. This cash flow statement sheet requires no user input. Okay, so we go back, and you'll also see proceeds from shareholder loans and your proceeds from loans and the leases, all in the cash flow from financing activities section here. So your cash flow statement is fully automated, no input on this sheet. The next section are other balance sheet items. So inventory days, debtor days, and creditor days, that's used to calculate your balance sheet values for inventory, trade receivables, and trade payables. The next item is the payroll accrual. The payroll accrual is calculated as a percentage of staff costs on the income statement. And you can also set a payment frequency, first payment month, and select either the current or the subsequent option. If you select subsequent, the payment month will be after the month after the period end. In terms of sales tax, you can set sales tax rates and then also specify a payment frequency, first payment month, and select the current or subsequent option. Income tax percentage is set in that section. You can also enter any assessed loss that needs to be applied, and then select the payment frequency, first payment month, and either the current or subsequent option. So in terms of your loans balances come from your startup balances, and then the additional loan amounts here, which will automatically be included on your amortization tables. The interest rate and repayment terms of the loans can be set here. So that's loan 1 for that amortization table, loan 2 for that one, loan 3 for that one, and leases for that one. So that doesn't mean you can only include 4 loans in a template. You can basically use one amortization table for all the loans that have the same loan terms, and you can include additional amounts in this cash flow statement section, which will automatically be updated to the amortization table. So initially it starts with your opening balance, and similarly all balance sheet balances start with your opening balances. So that's at the period end before the start date of the template. You'll take that trial balance and add the values here. And note that this whole section must balance to 0, just like any trial balance. So your equity and liabilities are entered as negative values and your assets as positive values. Okay, dividends. You can also set a calculation for dividends as a percentage of net profit. And then you can specify the payment frequency and the first payment month. You can also select the current, next, or subsequent option. If you select the current option, the dividend payment will be included in the month of the calculation. If you select the next option, the dividend payment will be included in the next month. And if you select the subsequent option, the dividend payment will be included relative to the first month's relationship to the year end. Okay, and that's it for the assumption sheet. We've had a look at the income statement in detail. We've had a look at the cash flow statement. The sheet requires no user input. And we've had a look at the calculations that are included on the balance sheet. And no user input is required on the balance sheet. So the remaining sheets, the loan 1, loan 2, loan 3 sheets, and the leases sheets are all amortization tables which are automatically compiled and require no user input. The initial loan starter balances are included if there are any, and then your additional loans on the assumption sheet are included in column C, and loan repayment, interest, and capital repayments are calculated automatically. So your interest charges are included in the income statement, and your capital repayments are included on the cash flow statement. And that's basically it. So if you need any further guidance on the template, you can via our detailed instruction sheet where we cover all aspects of the template. And you can also visit our support section of our YouTube channel where we release videos based on user feedback.